We ready?
Yep.
All right. Well, it is good to see and talk to everybody. I've missed everybody, and I'm so glad to be back. But what I want to do is thank Jane and Karen for doing all my work during the time I was gone. And I know you were in able hands, and I just appreciate all their help during this period of time, and for them catching me up here just a couple days ago. So, Jane, do we want to start with roll call?
Yes. Sorry, I like to take my notes while we're. Okay, Julie Donham.
Here.
Karen St. John.
Here.
Mary Morgan.
Here.
Alex Crowley.
Here.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Here.
Scott Wright.
Here.
Paul Ash.
Here.
And then Tracy Gates. And Jackie Yenna.
Here.
I think that's everybody. Okay, great.
The minutes were sent out in the packet. If everybody's had a chance to read them, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Jane, you want to do the roll call again?
I would love to. Julie Donham.
Yes.
Karen St. John.
Yes.
Mary Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Crowley.
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Scott Wright.
Yes.
Paul Ash.
Yes.
And Jackie Yenna.
Yes.
Great.
Great.
Can you all see the screen share?
Yep, I can see it. Everybody else see it?
Yes.
Okay. So Jane, do you want to move on to the financial reports for April and May?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So those of you who were here last month know that we reviewed financials, but we didn't formally approve them. So we'll re-review April financials, May financials, and then have a vote to approve them if you approve. So the balance sheet for April, total cash and cash equivalents, $2,059,699. As a reminder, this is just a snapshot, and on this particular day, we were, transacting to the tune of $10,000. So this is set up as a sweep, so our savings account immediately replenishes that negative balance. So we don't actually hang out with a negative balance. Other assets are notes receivable. This is a list of all of our current notes receivable. These are our rapid response fund loans, as well as our pre-existing handful of BUEA loans. So total notes receivable is $331,430. So our total assets, almost 2.4 million. Liabilities. So there's just one, and it's our Ignition Arts grant, which was a city art grant from 2020, which I talked to Sean about yesterday, and it is getting ready to be installed. So we should be able to pay that, I would say, in the near future and have that cleared out as well. And it's exciting that it's moving along. Yeah, again, total liabilities and equity, almost 2.4 million. And then looking at our April P&L, we had 24,000 in zone membership fees coming in. You'll note the comparison from 2020, we had zero. That's because we were in the early throes of the pandemic, and the deadline for EZID payments was pushed back, and we were just operating behind schedule, as everyone was. Controller's office, First Financial erroneously charged us service fees. So Controller's office is working to reverse these now. So that should turn back up in our account. Recover forward grants that went out, 20,100. And Zone Arts grants were nearly 3,500. The Recover Forward grants were also the arts grants, for the record, but they're just categorized differently. We paid $466 in business scholarships for total expenses of just over $24,000. And that -$7 is just because we paid slightly more out than what we received. Interest income was sort of not very happy to look at. Just interest rates are in the tank right now, so we're making much less on interest than we were a year ago. This is a year-to-date comparison. So this is, all of our activity this year. Total income, $66,000. We had some fees come in January that were, I went after, they were from 2020. So that's what those were late fees. And then this is our zone membership fee that was refunded. So, altogether 66,000 in income, again, ahead of last year because things were just moving slow last year. We also, this dues and subscription refund, these are the same things, AIEZ fees refunded. We've just renamed the category so that it will not be as confusing going forward. Total grants out year to date, almost 50,000. And then business scholarships out, $2,848. Total expenses, $53,707. I'm just walking through this. I know I'll pause for questions when we get to the end. Interest income of nearly 500, net income $12,954, which looks better than 2020. Okay, any questions about April activity? No? Okay, I'll keep going through May. So total cash and cash equivalents, $2,226,964. Again, we have that negative balance, which is just from the snapshot of that particular day. Notes receivable looks basically the same. The RRF loans are not in repayment yet, so the only payments we're receiving are on the pre-existing BUEA loans. That liability number is the same. Total liabilities and equity, $2,557,830. For the month-to-month comparison, you can see then we've gotten quite a few more zone membership fees. These include RDC fees. So I'm working on a spreadsheet for Jeff so he can separate out the RDC fees from the AIEZ fees so that it'll be really clear what we're looking at. So the RDC money, if you're, just as a reminder, we receive those payments on behalf of the RDC and then we pay them to the RDC. Those are for enterprise zone investment deductions that exist within the consolidated TIF. So we receive those and then immediately pay them. So that's why this income needs to be separated. This display is a little funny. I think it's because the way these scholarships in particular were entered, it's displaying the detail from last year. So we have paid arts grants in 2021, but they're categorized under RRF. So anyway, it's this 2020 entry is why this is displaying. So insurance expense we paid last month. Total business scholarships out, 2,775 almost. Total expenses, 6,186. Net ordinary income of 166,598. And then again, total interest income is not a very exciting number, but it's better than nothing. Net income of $166,700.83. And then for the year-to-date comparison, P&L, it just looks like we have earned a lot more income, but in reality, it's just because 2020 moved along so slowly. So $238,971 of income. Again, some of that is a larger than previous AIEZ refund. Some of that is 2020 RDC payments that were late coming in, that came in January. Recover Forward grants have been paid out to the tune of $44,100. That 1,000 is the Mill Scholarship Program. And then total Zone Arts grants of 3,500 for total grants out of almost 50,000. Again, insurance expense. This is another January RDC payment. Total business scholarships out $5,623.26. Total expenses of $59,893. Net income, we're up at almost 180,000. Does anybody have questions about May financial activity? Or would you like me to scroll to a particular page? It is exciting. I mean, it actually is exciting, but okay. Oh, and then we had Jeff add this budget versus actual comparison. And I'm not sure exactly what to say at this point. It's broken down by month. So this exercise or this page will be the most useful at the end of the year when we can compare the total that was budgeted against the total that was the total income and expense. But for now we added it, so we have kind of a mile marker going forward. But it's a new page for us, so it might take some time to get used to as a part of our financial report. Any questions?
Hey, Jane, it's Alex. We had a little excitement around insurance. I'm just thinking about the insurance line, looking at it versus budget, looking at it versus last year. Is it possible that we paid 2020 in the beginning of 2021 and then paid 2021? Is that why perhaps it's not showing up as an expense in 2020 and why we're over budget?
No, I asked the same question because it is extremely high, and the Office of Risk Management said that it was just an increased expense this year, and that they solicited quotes from different agencies, and that our cost has increased.
And then the zero amount last year, is it because we prepaid it perhaps in the previous year? Is that why it's not showing up in 2020?
That could be. Where are you looking for that? Shall I go to the 2020 comparison?
Yeah, if you just scroll up, I think it's a previous page. No, there it is. Oh no, there is an expense.
Yeah.
Oh, so okay. I was looking at April. I think April is zero. So
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
We did pay it late. We usually pay that in January, and it was paid last month. But good catch. So it did, it did increase over $1,000 this year. Anything else? So Julie, we have been taking a vote on these. Would you like me to call roll?
Yeah, I was going to ask if anybody has an issue with us voting on April and May together, or would you like to separate them out?
I'm okay with doing it together.
Okay, let's do it together. If you have an issue with that during the roll call, just let us know and we can split it up. So Jane, let's move
Yep.
forward. Can I have a motion to approve the April and May financial reports?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, or okay, roll call, sorry.
Yeah. Julie Donham,
I approve.
Karen St. John,
Yes.
Mary Morgan,
Yes.
Alex Crowley,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scott Wright,
Yes.
Paul Ash,
Yes.
and Jackie Yenna.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I can, would you like me to move on to the director's report?
Yep.
Okay. I don't have too much to add. I wanted to mention that we had some outstanding questions about scholarships in public comment. The public comment issue has come up at a couple different meetings. So I followed up with Troas Hart and Dennis Carson at Seed and Fort Wayne and Lafayette respectively. They seem to be the two most active. They're no longer enterprise zones, they're economic and entrepreneurship districts, but they're sort of hybrid versions of us. Anyway, structurally, legally they're the same. They said that they only notice meetings for public comment when they are voting on late filings. So they weren't opposed to it necessarily. They just said that they don't include public comment as an agenda item, except for on those meetings where they're reviewing, late filing EZIDs. So I'm not sure if the group wants to discuss that, but I did want to report out on it. And then the second item was about the administration of scholarship programs. And this was a really interesting conversation. Fort Wayne especially has de-emphasized their resident scholarship programs. They have come to the conclusion that what happens is they inadvertently end up supporting the institution of higher ed rather than the zone resident. So their experience has been that whatever the award letter amount is for that goes to the institution, then there's an equivalent reduction in the financial aid package for that resident. So the kind of de facto support goes to, it doesn't wind up supporting the individual. So I thought that was really interesting. So that was kind of one reason they've de-emphasized it. And then the other reason they've de-emphasized their scholarship program is that they feel that there are better approaches to kind of transformative economic development. They've spent the kind of bulk of their efforts in the last few years on an entrepreneurship and equity program that they borrowed from a program in Detroit, and they feel really strongly about it and have had a lot of success with it. So that's something we could talk about another time if we want to. Ultimately, in terms of like how their scholarship program is administered, they issue a letter. The individual never pays out of pocket. They pay the expense up front for the scholarships that they do administer. And any questions about that? Those were my main items. Yeah.
Yeah, do we know that institutions here have the same approach about reducing the
Financial aid packages.
right?
I could try to talk to someone at IU. I don't have it, I don't have that visibility. So I feel like I can't make that assumption here.
Mhm.
I mean, we assume that if there's an overpayment on the account at the end of the semester, that the refund goes to the student. And there's been one case where it came back to us. It was a small amount. And so I don't, it didn't go back. It was like $40. And I didn't have a mechanism for it. So I sat on it. But yeah, just to answer your question, I don't have that visibility. And some of our resident programs, I think the bulk of our scholarships do go to Ivy Tech and IU. There have been a few that go to other specific training programs, but especially as Ivy Tech continues to do all this really cool, workforce development. I think it is interesting to support that as a solution for zone residents. Conversely, with next level jobs and all of the support from Recover Forward, those programs for the most part can be paid for through other funding sources at Ivy Tech if it's like a job skill program.
But you haven't gotten any feedback from recipients of the scholarship that they are basically, it's just that it's kind of a wash for them.
No, we have positive
Okay.
feedback from the scholarship recipients, for sure. So those were the only items on my director's report for today.
All right. Are there any more questions on the director's report? All right. We want to move forward to new business then?
Yep. I'll start my screen share again and ask Larry to talk to us about the electronic meetings policy. He's up for it, which he said he was.
I mean, I don't know if I'm up for it, but I guess I will. No, just kidding.
No pressure.
Yeah, right. So we talked about this a little bit before when we were amending the bylaws, is looking at the possibility of adopting, just making sure that we're memorializing the ability to meet electronically, since it's worked out over the past year. And I had mentioned to you all that the General Assembly had been working on, and then they eventually passed for regular city boards and commissions, an electronic meeting law that opened up the ability for all boards and commissions to meet electronically. After digging into it, we had some questions last time, both about public comment, as Jane just alluded to in her report earlier, but also about the electronic meetings policies to the extent to which open doors laws apply to the BUEA, as it's an independent nonprofit. So digging into that a little bit more, what I've known is that as an independent nonprofit doesn't fit the definition, but we've commonly treated the BUEA as a regular board and commission of the city. One, to maintain transparency. That seems to be the will of the board commonly, is to make sure that we're being transparent. But two, also the requirements typically are pretty de minimis for open doors policy. It simply requires that we provide 48 hours advance notice of meetings, and then the ability for the public to observe and participate. With the law that was passed about the electronic meetings policy and reviewing it, there were some restrictions that seemed overly restrictive, particularly as it may apply to an organization like the BUEA. So what I've done for this electronic meetings policy is I've taken kind of the spirit of the statute, and I've modeled it into an electronic meetings policy specifically for the BUEA to work for the BUEA. And just to highlight quickly this policy, and then I could talk about a little bit of the differences if the board wants. But the policy essentially is that going forward, the BUEA acknowledges that if necessary, or if you all want, any member can participate electronically in a particular meeting, as long as that the means of electronic participation, so in this case, we've been using Zoom, allows everybody to simultaneously communicate with each other, which Zoom does, and does allow the public to attend and observe the meeting, which seems to continue to be the will of the board. There's also some mechanisms for making sure that we're recording in the minutes who was physically present in the room for meetings and who is participating electronically. There's some rules for if there's any kind of technological problem, how that'll work. And just noting that for the purposes of quorum, under the bylaws of the BUEA, electronic participation will count toward quorum, and you can take official action for that in addition to the staff. One thing I will note just briefly about the policy, I did notice a mistake in it that will correct. So if you all do vote to approve this, it should be to vote to approve it as amended. There are two section 6s on there, just the numbering was off. So at the bottom, the last two sections are both labeled section 6. So the preceding section should be section 5, and then the last section, obviously section 6. Just that one correction. This does provide, as you'll see in section 5, it kind of provides some general rules, just memorializing kind of the current practice for running these meetings. And the reason why I included this particular section in here in terms of who should be the designated host, how comments will work and things like that, is just so that as you know, whether we have a new executive director ever in the future or any new board members, they can kind of pick this up and like have a template to use for how we've been doing these electronic meetings. And I think the way we've been doing it is pretty well. Some of it's just general etiquette. Other parts involving public communication, it allows for the ability for the chair to recognize individuals and members of the public. If you do want to accept comment ever, you will have that ability under this policy. It's not so restrictive as to not allow it, and it's not so permissive as to make it a free-for-all for the board meeting. So however it's necessary for you all to have an orderly board meeting, you can do that. Certainly under Indiana law, you're not required to accept that, but understanding that can build a lot of trust in the community, and so you'll have the ability to use that. Some of the differences I'll just quickly highlight between this policy and others for typical city boards and commissions is that the law actually placed restrictions on how many meetings and how many individuals as part of a board could participate electronically. So the statute requires that at least 50% of a board be physically present at the meeting, and less than 50%, up to 49% or whatever it is, could participate electronically. However, you can't participate in more than half of the meetings in any given year electronically. And so that in particular, especially in regard to a nonprofit, seems overly cumbersome. And so in digging in it further, I did find a public access counselor opinion that noted that urban enterprise associations are exempt from those open doors laws. So while we'll continue to basically follow more or less open doors laws in regard specifically to the electronic meetings policy, I think it's wise to accept the flexibility that the public access counselor has given us in their informal opinions, and to make this policy as flexible as possible for the board. And if you don't know, the public access counselor is kind of the staff member in the state of India that's assigned to interpret the open door law and kind of give these advisory opinions for municipalities and agencies as to how it operates in practice, because there's always little questions that we may have about how it works. So, and if anybody has any questions, I'm obviously happy to answer them.
Thanks, Larry.
I think this policy kind of gives us a lot of flexibility while maintaining our transparency with public comment and public viewing of the meetings.
I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, I have two questions. In section 3, there's a sentence that says the BUEA may exclude members of the public upon majority vote of the members of the board. Is that, Larry, is that standard for all other public bodies, or
No.
what's the reason for putting that in there?
Absolutely. So actually, that came directly out of the public access counselor's opinion that I talked about referencing. So recognizing, so other boards and commissions for the municipality or agencies, there is a separate law for executive session. So there are certain topics that certain boards and commissions can meet in executive session about. Some of those include salary negotiations, hiring. And so if there was any time that something sensitive came up, so one of the staff members, for instance, if the board wanted to talk about the executive director, not saying that would ever happen, but there's something sensitive around a personnel issue that the board would like, that's why that provision is in there, that you all could take a vote and say, you know what, this is a sensitive matter for the board, and for this particular limited matter, we think that it's best not to have that to be spread publicly, and that we'll have a closed meeting to understand, to kind of talk through those issues. So that's specifically why that policy is in there. the opinion that I'm referring to from the public access counselor was involving specifically that an urban enterprise association was discussing the salary of an executive director. And so they excluded members of the public from that discussion. And the question was, did they violate open doors laws? And the answer was no, they didn't. That was okay because they were a private nonprofit, as you are. That technically is not overseen by the Department of Local Government Finance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wanted to include that in there so that there was a flexibility of this board to also operate if there ever was a sensitive issue that we would discuss. And certainly if that ever becomes an issue, that's something that, you'd want to discuss with your staff attorney, me in this case, but whoever it may be in the future.
Okay.
Before
Thanks.
taking that action.
Yeah, and then I had another question just about the logistics of electronic remote participation. In the before times, we met in, I don't know, McCloskey or one of the conference rooms. I guess I'm curious about where the physical meeting would take place and if it has to be in council chambers because of the, just the technical setup to make those hybrid meetings possible.
So nope, our IT department is in the process of outfitting many of our meeting rooms with the ability to participate electronically so that we wouldn't have to just use council chambers. That opens up a lot of more rooms to us to have that simultaneous communications. So far, they're using a device. It's called an OWL device. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's basically like a conference, almost a conference phone call with a camera on it that spins to whoever's speaking. It kind of freaks me out, I'll be honest, but it does provide for the ability to see and simultaneously participate in a meeting. It only freaks me out because the camera tends to pan automatically and will sometimes rest on an individual in the room, and that has been me, and I just don't, it's not my preference. But.
All right, thanks so much.
I have a question for Larry. I just want to make the statement and just confirmation. So what you're saying is that we are not required to have public meetings, but we choose to have public meetings, but we don't have to as a board because we're not a public entity, we're a private foundation.
A nonprofit, yeah, that's correct.
Thanks. Yep. And
yeah,
thank you. It's a nonprofit. And so we choose to do that. And then just to keep perspective here, we're going to go from where we met in the conference room in City Hall and the meetings were open to the public to going back to that, but the meetings now in that room will be broadcast on Facebook. At the end of the day, we're morphing to that because we've been using Zoom and people can participate electronically, even though we're still back in that room, just perspective wise. It won't be the same environment that we're returning to as from before.
Yeah, so it'd be more of a hybrid. I think we would still continue to use Zoom. This is a discussion, obviously, for the board, how you want to proceed. You would still use Zoom. Facebook is kind of almost like whenever cats broadcast a meeting, Facebook is just a broadcast. We can monitor Facebook, we can receive comments, so that does work. But in terms of board communication, we'd still have to use something like Zoom so that there is a contemporaneous back and forth. So I think that we would end up using a hybrid, though, you're correct, of like, it could be in person and it could be also Zoom. Now, I will say the board also does have the flexibility. This is just giving you the option. If as a board you decided we want all in-person meetings at some point again, and we don't want to utilize this electronic option, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to. This is just allowing you the ability to use that.
Right. And then we don't even have to continue to broadcast them on Facebook either.
That's correct. You wouldn't have to continue to broadcast them on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay.
And also I do want to say, like, this is written to be software neutral. So there are some of these other policies floating around the city that call out Zoom specifically and call out Facebook specifically. I didn't want to do that just because while that's this year, I don't know what's going to happen next year or 5 years from now, or what kind of legal TikTok dances I'm going to have to be doing next year. So I want to keep it content neutral or software neutral.
Okay. And I'm not advocating we don't have transparency. I just want to sort of like state what we're talking about in a really basic way, so that we know Because I don't think anyone until recently, when we've had these conversations, we were sort of asking even 2 days ago, are we even required to make these a public meeting? So to make that statement now is the first time I've heard it like that. And so this is not to do with electronic, my question that I'm now getting to, my second part, but it's more just overall. So we have these public meetings that are not required to be public, but we choose to make them public. Is there ever a time, and maybe this is more a question for Jane or even Julie coming out of banking, where we're making these loans to people and there's sensitive information that we shouldn't be broadcasting publicly? Maybe there's not. I'm just asking from the other direction. Are we oversharing because we were sort of operating like we were a City of Bloomington commission or board where all the documents are public record, et cetera, where in fact our documents are not public record?
You know, that's
So-
interesting because there may be some confidentiality to that we shouldn't be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I don't,
go
I
ahead.
actually don't know, just to be really quick, that we would be able to operate that way. So while you're not subject to open doors laws, there is a contract with city staff. And so city staff is still bound by the way we collect and can share records in terms of how we would have to share those. So those are still public documents in terms of what comes into our possession. There are obviously by law, though, there are some elements of financial information whenever you're giving a loan that are confidential by law that we don't have to share. And certainly we wouldn't turn those over. And if there is anything sensitive that we're talking about, there is absolutely, we could take measures to try to make that as protected as possible.
Okay, well, that should probably do it then, if that's the case. I was just wondering about the financial information of our applicants who approach us. I know when I was on the approval group with, I think, Alex Crowley on this call too, for the ROI and all the funds that went out during the pandemic, there was a boatload of confidential information, but that was run through, I want to say through ROI. So, and probably then the city, of course, too. So thanks. I just have always been wanting to ask that question, and it popped up here with the whole conversation about whether or not we're a publicly, open door entity. So thanks. That's it for me.
Yeah, a note on those loans. Those records are kept in the community foundation's grant management software. So that's where they're housed, and they're not housed on any of our servers, like the tax documents or whatever. There is financial information like a number relating to a credit score or whatever that we keep in spreadsheets. But we did also notify all applicants that the fact of their loan would be, in the public record and mentioned publicly. So our BUEA borrowers for that program should be comfortable with the amount of information that we share about it. But I do think it's important. I appreciate you noting it. I think it's important to be aware of.
Thank you.
May we document the requirement that Larry do a TikTok dance at least once a year?
Totally.
I would like to tender my resignation immediately if that's the case.
So Julie, I think we were looking for a vote
Can
on this.
I have a motion to approve the meeting policy moving forward?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Jane, you want to do a roll call?
Yep. Julie Dunham,
Yes.
Karen St. John,
Yes.
Mary Morgan,
Yes.
Alex Crowley,
Yes.
Kate Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Scott Wright,
Yes.
Paul Ash,
Yes.
and Jackie Enna.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Larry.
And I think that was it for our
We-
agenda items.
No unfinished business. Is there any general discussion? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just want to interject, and I was a few minutes late, so I apologize, but I'm just really grateful, Julie, that you are back leading the meetings. So thank you. We're
Well,
so
and
happy you're here.
I thanked you and Jane for doing all my work for me while I was gone. I appreciate that, and I'm glad to be back. I've missed everybody, so.
Yeah.
Our next BUEA meeting will be on Wednesday, July 14th. And Jane, I assume it will be by Zoom also?
Yeah, and I believe we will be live from McCloskey. So stay tuned. I'll provide information about that if anyone does want to come in person. I think we'll be ready for hybrid by that time.
With the owl?
With the owl.
So I need a motion to adjourn, I guess.
So moved.
Second.
All in, go Jane, I guess we have to call
Do we have
again.
to roll call Larry for that? We never do.
No,
All
No,
right,
you're fine. By assent.
Okay.
all right, we will
we
see.
can all just leave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will
All right.
plan to see everybody July 14th if we don't see you sooner, but it's good to see everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye.